Hello there, good evening to you and welcome to The World Today on Channels Television. I'm Cynthia Are. Here are top stories around the globe right now. Now, topping our news today is the Ebola outbreak. The medical charity Médecins Sans Frontières, that's the MSF, says the outbreak of the virus in West Africa will take at least 6 months to bring under control. Speaking in Geneva, the MSF president called for strengthened international coordination led by the World Health Organization.
People queued up on Thursday outside cordoned-off areas in Liberia with the hope they will be let in to see their families in a region quarantined due to Ebola. It's one of the most well-known junctions just outside the capital, Monrovia, where the road splits to Bomi and other areas the Liberian military has isolated in a bid to halt the spread of the biggest Ebola outbreak West Africa has ever seen. International agencies are looking into emergency food drops and truck convoys to reach extremely hungry people in Liberia and Sierra Leone, a top World Bank official said on Thursday. Hunger is spreading fast as members die, leaving crops rotting in fields. Truckers scared of the highly infectious disease have halted deliveries, shops have closed, and major airlines have shut down routes, isolating large swaths of the countries. But news of experimental drugs which have been brought in for medical personnel has raised hopes.
I'm very much happy concerning the test, because the test it will also help us, for we that don't have the virus, to live too.
A consignment of experimental Ebola drugs arrived by plane in Liberia on Wednesday to treat 2 doctors suffering from the virus, which has killed more than 1,000 people across 4 West African countries. The United Nations World Food Programme said that it had declared Guinea, Liberia and Sierra Leone, the 3 countries reeling from the outbreak, a level 3 food emergency, its highest threat. It's urgently mobilizing teams to get food into the area and prevent widespread hunger and deaths. Despite being placed on high risk, Kenya Airways said it will not halt its service to 4 West African countries stricken by the deadly Ebola virus.
We've not been advised to ban travel, and that's why we're continuing to fly into that particular region. We've had, of course, to carry out surveillance around the airport here. When I talk of surveillance, not direct surveillance ourselves, but to look at what the Ministry of Health is doing around the port here. And we are satisfied by the work that is being done.
Kenya's Transport Secretary Michael Kamau also said he saw no reason to stop Kenya Airways from flying from West Africa access to Nairobi Airport.
First of all, there is no reported case of Ebola in Kenya. There is no reported case of Ebola in Tanzania. We would be very concerned, if it, or Uganda for that matter, while we have people crossing. All the other people are coming by air. Don't forget, 4 years ago, we had Ebola in a neighboring country, and we did not get to this. So where has all this come from? We are importing a crisis that is far away and like domesticating it. Why do we want to create a crisis instead of trying to manage a situation that is very far away from here?
The outbreak has brought fresh attention to efforts to find a cure. Scientists in the United States studying Ebola say they have found how it blocks and disables the body's ability to battle infections in a discovery that should help the search for potential cures and vaccines.
We now go live to Washington, D.C. to join the Voice of America's Carol Pearson. She is the health correspondent for the Voice of America. Carol, thank you so much for joining us on The World Today. Now, do you think more needs to be done by the international community, as the WHO has said? Do you think, they're not doing enough at the moment and they actually need to do more?
Well, it's very evident from the fact that this has mushroomed so much and that you've now had 1,000 people dead and 2,000 infected, that more needed to be done from the very beginning. These countries have emerged from war and they have a very broken health infrastructure. And so they need a lot of support from the outside in order to get this contained. And I think that help is beginning to come in.
Now, what do you make of the actions from the part of Kenya? Do you think they're being reckless? You know, knowing that they've been placed on high risk. Do you think, you know, with their continued flights makes them look reckless? Do you think they're underestimating the potential for this virus to do more harm in their country?
The health agencies have been saying that there's no need to stop flights. However, you have to look at the fact that a Liberian flew to Lagos and he infected a number of people there. So it's a call. It's an ethical call. It's something that perhaps you can do to check people who are coming from these areas and monitor them so that you can put them on a watch. And when people come from Liberia or Sierra Leone or Guinea, and they arrive here in the United States, they are quarantined for 21 days. I mean, it's self-selected, but they stay in a place for 21 days and they take their temperatures on a regular basis. These are people who are working with the medical community in these affected countries. And at the end of 21 days, if they have no Ebola, and so far if they haven't, then they freely mix with their colleagues at Johns Hopkins or any other medical centers that are supplying relief and health workers there.
Now, my final question for you, Carol, is the WHO has said that this virus is being underestimated. But how does one strike a balance between, you know, not panicking and also not taking this virus for granted?
Well, the WHO said the virus, the toll is underestimated because a lot of people are still burying their sick family members or the ones who have died on their own. And when they've opened the new treatment centers, and they really should be called treatment centers as opposed to isolation units, but when they open the new treatment centers, they're getting a lot more patients than they used to. So it's very hard to figure out who has contracted the disease, especially in these very remote areas where you perhaps don't have enough medical staff or doctors or treatment centers.
Well, thank you very, very much. I've been speaking with the Voice of America's Carol Pearson. She is the VOA's health correspondent, and she's been speaking to us from the VOA newsroom in Washington, D.C. Thank you very much, Carol. Now, still talking about the Ebola virus, knowledge is power, and access to information is a major way of curbing the spread of the virus. The state governments across Nigeria are taking the cue, organizing sensitizations and enlightenment campaigns to help curb the spread. Meanwhile, in Ogun State, the Nigerian Medical Association has trained about 100 health workers, but is also asking for safety equipment as well as isolation centers for victims.